All right, it's the last day of the year. Last day of 2024. Let's go. I'm on my way to CrossFit, so I'm borderline not awake yet. But we got a topic. I'm going to go to Reddit today. Had people join the live stream last night from Commute. And live stream is on my Dev Leader YouTube channel, so it was awesome to see people drop in. So thanks for doing that. If you're curious, it's every Monday at 7 p.m. Pacific, very much like these conversations, but we go to the chat, we take questions and all that kind of stuff. So it's unique for that reason, but it's a lot of fun for me. So great to see people from Commute jumping over to that. But the topic from today is going to be about, I think this is a pretty common thing actually, but it's going to be about, I did a topic yesterday on meetings, but this one's going to be about, is it common to forget things that were discussed in meetings? And I wanted to chat through that, and clearly someone's thinking about it if they're posting it on Reddit and asking about it, so probably worth going through. But a quick reminder, if you want questions answered, leave them in the comments. If you have something that is something you want to keep anonymous, go send a message to Dev Leader on any social media platform you want, and I'll keep it anonymous, and then you can write more detail. Okay, so is it common? I would say this is going to be highly dependent on the person, right? A typical answer in software engineering is, it depends. But I think even for myself, I can say this is a common thing. But there's different sorts of things that, depending on the meeting, my understanding of the domain, and I guess like the format of the meeting, that I am better at retaining and or forgetting. So there's that to consider. But I think one thing that I want to kind of talk through is like how people are going into meetings, how prepared they are, and I guess like what tools they're using, right? So first things first, I guess when we're going into meetings, I would say like try to have some amount of preparation, right? This can look different because if you're not the one organizing the meeting, maybe there aren't like pre-read notes or anything, but like try to make sure that if you're about to go into a call or you're like going into a meeting, like understand what the context is. There's literally, people like shy away from this, but there's literally nothing wrong with reaching out to the meeting organizer if you're not even sure what the meeting is going to be about. Just reaching out to them and saying, hey, like, can you give more context for this meeting? Because if you're getting invited to something and you're like, man, I don't even know why I'm included on this, it's a waste of my time, like, ask, right? Like, if maybe the person's like, oh, I thought you knew about thing X, and you're like, nope, I don't, and they're like, cool. Don't show up to this. We'll get Billy from the team to show up. Just reach out and double check with people, especially if the invite itself doesn't have a lot of context. But I think that's kind of step one. Maybe it sounds obvious to some people, but if you're honest with yourself, how often are you doing it? As I'm saying this, I'm certain I could do a better job. There's sometimes I'm invited to things and I maybe trust, I like to trust that people invite me for a good reason, but if I'm strapped for time, like I should be asking that, number one. And then number two, because this is about preparedness, like what's gonna help me retain more information? Well, if I'm not trying to figure out why I'm there in the first place, that will give me some more opportunity to use my brain for remembering important stuff. Okay, so preparedness is one thing. This also kind of feeds into the domain knowledge, because if you're unfamiliar with a particular domain, I want to give you an example. Yesterday we had a design review with one of the principal engineers on the team. Did great work. Other principal engineers on the team that have been on the team for significantly longer than I have. It's been less than a year for me still. Coming up on a year though. And there are topics in the design doc that are being discussed, and we're kind of going through it and answering questions together. There are topics in the design doc that like I actually don't understand yet. Okay, so in a meeting like that, in terms of how much I'm going to remember about what's being discussed, some parts are really going to stick out to me, and other parts are going to be more like I can walk away from that meeting understanding some more of the really basic stuff. So like a lot of my mental capacity gets steered towards some of that. Like I can leave being like, hey, I feel educated about some of the basic things, and maybe there's a couple of nuances or details or timelines or meetings and stuff that I had to follow up with where I'm like, okay, I'll remember that. But there might be details that came up in there, and purely because my lack of domain understanding, I'm not just going to automatically remember them. In fact, there'll be things that like I won't get the details of them, but they'll help me in the moment understand some of the more primitive parts of it. So certainly I would say that kind of thing happens to me a lot, and it's driven by how much domain knowledge and expertise I have. So I don't know like the psychology behind it. I'm not going to like pretend like I do, but my guess is that I have more mental capacity to understand and focus on the context of the meeting if I understand the domain. And if I'm still learning the domain, then there's a lot of mental capacity put towards just like, trying to pick up on the basics. That's how I like to think about it. Again, not a psychologist, so I don't know if that's true, but that's the rationale I have. So that's kind of like domain knowledge. Preparedness going into it is a factor that can, of course, influence that. Car's beeping. My wife is in the vehicle in front of me. When we drive to CrossFit, her work is significantly closer to CrossFit than home. So we drive separately because I have to head back the complete opposite direction, and she can just go to work. It's kind of wasteful, but this guy's cutting me off. Now my wife's way ahead of me. It's totally uncool. We can fix that though. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is, I guess, like how much you're focusing on the meeting, which maybe is like kind of tied to the first point, but if we're being honest with ourselves here, I think that there's probably a bunch of meetings that we've sat in where we're like, especially with remote work, you're like, I'm tuned out. But it doesn't just happen with remote work. It can happen in person when you're bringing laptops and stuff to meetings. But truly, like, be honest with yourself. You don't have to like publish it online or whatever, but can you think about in the past 7 days, in the past week, can you think about a meeting that you were in where you were like, I don't really know exactly why I'm here, how I'm adding value, and I'm going to be like multitasking and doing other stuff? I would wager probably almost every single person listening to this, as long as you weren't just like on vacation. So if you were working over the past 7 days, for a majority of those days, like, do you think that you probably were in a meeting where you were multitasking and doing something else? Because I would say, especially in contexts like that, in terms of remembering things, probably very little, right? And it kind of goes back to the first point, like, why are you there? I get someone invited you, but like, honestly, like, why are you there? There's nothing, like, people have this thing where they're like, oh, I got invited, I guess I have to. No, like, have a conversation about it. Like, someone invited you because they wanted you to be included. It doesn't necessarily mean like that's how it needs to be. So yeah, if you're tuned out in meetings, you're going to recall less, which is a very brief point that I wanted to make before bridging into this next part, which is kind of like, I wanted to talk about like tools that you bring to meetings. One of them is, of course, a laptop. This is a common thing. I've had different experiences with this throughout my career. I know, like, before Microsoft, I used to go into meetings and there'd be people that bring laptops and they just work during the meetings. And I'm not going to dictate to other people how they can make the most effective use of their time in a meeting. But I would say, kind of like my earlier point, if you find you're in a meeting and you're just distracted doing other things, your value in the meeting is probably very low. And it's not not an insult. It's just, I think, like a reality. It's probably much lower than if you were tuned into the meeting. It doesn't necessarily mean that you need to be tuned in. Maybe you just don't need to be there. Now, some people will say, like, well, I take notes on my laptop. Okay, that's fine. Like, I'm not saying no laptops. So don't misinterpret my point. My point is that if you have a tool like a laptop and then you're using it for not taking notes or not, in the meeting, someone's making points about something, you're like, oh, like, I'll check that for us in the conversation so we have more data points. Like, if you're not using the tool to help with the meeting, and then you have this tool, air quotes, that's just enabling you to do other stuff, again, like, it's not that that's wrong. I'm not telling you how to be an adult, but if you're like, I don't know why I'm not retaining a lot from meetings, like, maybe that's why, right? You're misusing a tool. It's kind of funny, like, because the next tool I want to talk about is a pretty low-tech one, but just a notebook. So I go in between bringing a paper notebook and nothing. And this depends for me on, I guess, I don't have it down to like a science. I'd love to say I do. I'm still like getting these coughs out of nowhere where I'll be talking and I'm like, there's something in my throat, like I can't breathe. It's very bizarre because I've been over my cold for a little while now. This car's really got to pick up the pace. It's very dangerous. They're going below the speed limit in the left lane. And then people are forced to like maneuver around them because they're going below the speed limit. But so I go between notebooks and nothing for meetings. And the reason I go between the two is if I have a notebook, it's because I'm preparing myself to take follow-up actions. If I need to take, or I'm like going into something thinking there's going to be a lot of follow-up action and I need to make sure that I'm the one responsible for that, I bring a notebook. I find personally, if I have a laptop, it's a heavy-handed tool for the task. I also find that when I take notes on a laptop, I don't do well with digital notes. It's kind of weird. I wish I did. It almost makes no sense to me that like someone whose life is entirely digital, I like don't do well with digital notes, but I don't. So very much a notebook kind of person. But the other situation for me is like if I just want to be fully engaged in the conversation, I bring nothing. Not even a notebook. And that's because my expectation is I will be sitting there not even trying to think about what notes I should take and more about just like literally focus on the conversation itself. So I go between the two. I've had people. I actually had someone recently kind of call it out. They said, "Oh, like you didn't bring your laptop or you didn't bring whatever." And I'm like, "No, just kind of how I work, right?" Now there literally have been situations where I've been burned by having this mental model of like I'm gonna, not bring my notebook. I'm just gonna tune in and be part of the conversation. And then someone says something that I wasn't expecting. And I go, oh man, like, it's almost like my brain isn't ready for like, it's not primed for remembering that. And then I'm like, I don't have a tool for this, right? Like, I need my notebook or else I'm going to forget this. And then like, I'll pull my phone out of my pocket or something and I'm like, sorry, I'm not texting. I literally need to record this. So back to my earlier point, for me, I probably should just make sure I have my low-tech notebook with me at all times, and then I don't have to worry about that. I can just kind of like, focus on the conversation only if that's the mode I need to be in. But I should probably just bring my notebook. So all of that to say that like I think that we have different tools, we have different ways of approaching meetings, And if you're like me and you basically, you know, likely will forget a lot of the details in a meeting, then like kind of change your approach, change your tools, right? Clearly, I think if someone's willing to ask this question online, they're kind of acknowledging like, whatever I'm doing is not working. Cool. So like we got to change it. Those are some of the variables that I would recommend playing with. And like I said, some of them include like maybe don't go to the meeting if it's not relevant, right? It's going to be way more difficult to remember things from a meeting if you're like tuned out from it. I think, you know, for me, I had to find the right tool for note taking. I think that's very important. Happens to be a pen and a notebook. That's what does it for me. I'm curious though. I wonder if there's like this opportunity even with and this is kind of maybe kind of a moot point for remote meetings, but is there space beside this person? Yeah, okay, we'll do it. For remote meetings, like I work at Microsoft, so having Copilot in the meeting is like ridiculously good for meeting notes. I need to use this more. So I think as I was talking through a lot of this, I was still picturing myself going to physical meetings, to be honest. So I should have kind of touched on this a little bit more with remote meetings. But with remote meetings, I'm obviously on my laptop already, but I get flustered if I need to take a note and I like want to go type the note. It's almost like too weird for me. So I do approach it the same way. Like even though I'm on my laptop, I'll have a physical book with me. Like I keep it on my desk. So I'll go, you know, take notes that way. But what I wanted to say was with Copilot, kind of less applicable for an in-person meeting, but maybe there's some intelligent ways or creative ways to use that. But I think I need to leverage Copilot a lot more for my online meetings, because I've had situations where I was talking with someone after and we were like, wait a second, like we talked about this recently, like when we both couldn't remember the outcome. And we said, wait though, like we talked about it in that meeting, like let's go back. And we asked Copilot and we said, like, in this meeting, what was the outcome like of this decision that was talked about? And it actually gave us the timestamp where the person was talking about it. And we were like, oh, hell yeah, like that is the future. But like being able to use tools like that, like I am not well practiced at that. And I think that's a huge opportunity. It's not a Copilot advertisement. Literally no one pays me to talk about Copilot. But I'm being genuine because I have had it work really well for that reason. And I think that it's one of those things, like if I don't practice using it, then I'm not going to be aware of all the benefits that it could add. So I have personally some work to do on that. But those are my thoughts on not forgetting everything in a meeting. So I hope that's helpful. Yeah, we'll do another one on the way back from CrossFit. Take care.